Jejembo Tordor Nimijan, Goner Monum Jembo, Gabiab. Bagardangam Sando Shermardo, Tomba Tujan, Laki Jamsar, the General Jangams, Jopper Tujan, Yelarma. Jimmy Panzo Jala Soranda, Gonja Tobambo, Shinjilo, Gonja Tobambo, Shinjilo, Gonja Tobambo. Shinjilo, Yanti, Shansu, Sanwa, Sanwa Chimbom, Papa Kundu Zambu, Shansu, Sanwa, Sayan, Bolanderkoto, Soram, Habala, Titi. Tagler devgetan tartardan maun semchernamji chet memji jinjiktendan kyabartul hon zaon dugdug gzur semchernamla leki number member nete anyari mangdan dugbar membim jevi number jagbar namuxar tandok sur delapten ne maun tiki tami semchernamji leki number membim jevi number jagbar shibran gyoro teni chanchu sanwa sayin yambo lan Dörkötör mebam pagbalag dörkö sangeji zamchırdan keve çembur toblapten nyari mandan dırdık number jagbi didefnya prashago pagbalag zama lang dani sharshuk sharki shuk samsı Chigdi rabe yonzu korvi ruwa jigi yodo ruwa ten anakjan tansın da zabadan nimadan davi gotyan mebagu Yertere çim narda mepiya nyara jivshava yodo devjendam nar chimbo jivshava nyarada zrbjiba jivshava nyarada chumpar jivshava nyarada memda jivshava nyarada ranzat jivshava nyarada donhna jivshava nyarada changkur jivshava nyarada chagmar jivshava nyarada chagzug jivshava nyarada chagku jivshava nyarada Sorton jivshava nyarada chambok jivshava chagmong jivshava nyarada no zanjin jivshava nyarada kankit jivshava nyarada mebjir jivshava nyarada janmo jivshava nyarada gokchu jivshava nyarada kamchak jivshava nyarada migza jivshava nyarada chagr jivshava nyarada chirtu jivshava nyarada chig dirtari jivshava nyarada Chomang jivshava nyarva nyarva shelan koine nyarva
Could anyone pronounce this?
Ka nyal jaga nyal nyal Push
No.
Nyalva Divi ajar divi de means nyarva
It means hell realm.
Nyala Nava Shanchusan wasai nyambur meba bhagbala chigrib korbi nang da tertara nyara namgi namjang jart meba yolla devjin de ngumbu de jivshe ta chaba
In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. So let us continue with the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I think we've all paid great attention and placed great importance to studying of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. In terms of history, many people also place the great importance to Ksitigarbha Sutra, especially the great masters. Also, lots of practitioners and Buddhist followers, they take Ksitigarbha Sutra very seriously. On top of that, a group of people who don't necessarily have faith, but they have faith in Ksitigarbha Sutra. This time I am not giving an extensive teaching on the Ksitigarbha Sutra. I think the literal meanings are very simple, easy to understand. On top of that, there are many commentaries and teachings on top of Ksitigarbha Sutra and the stories that's related to Ksitigarbha Sutra. So I'm not being too extensive in terms of my teaching. And at the beginning of every day's class, I would begin or open the class with a story. Today, the story goes like this. Back in the Tang Dynasty, there was once a monastery called the Kaishan Monastery, and within that monastery, there is a Ksitigarbha statue that is about 1 meter tall. Nobody knows who made this Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's statue, but people would go there and pay reverence to this statue. And over there was once an officer whose name is Dun, and he died at the age of 61 due to some illness. But after a day and night, he revived from death again. After he woke up, and then he requested that he has to go to the Kaishan Monastery and has to see the statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. And then after he arrived at the monastery, the monks asked him why he wanted to see the statue. He said that after he died, he went to the hell realm, and first of all, his first stop was to see the Yama. The Yama thinks that his life is should not be ended yet. It was not in his record, so to speak. He was supposed to still to live in the human realm and have the opportunities to propagate the Dharma and maybe benefit others. And he actually has lots of merit because of his meritorious deeds. And then Dun told the Yama, saying that he did want to go back to life, go back to human realm. Just like nowadays, there are people who would appear to already have been dead for a short period of time or completely fainted, just like they've already died, but then miraculously would come back to life. There are situations like that, and commonly seen both domestically or internationally. And then after Dun expressed his willingness to go back to human realm, Yama asked him whether he wanted to take a tour in the hell realm, and then he agreed. So they went to all different realms, and the 18 major hell realms, and small hell realms, small hell, and all of those. And he saw lots of different sufferings, such as burning and cutting, and all of those torments and suffering. That's difficult to express. And he then saw a monastic, someone. He saw there is one monastic person inside each and every hell, using different forms and different appearances to liberate and help other beings inside the hell realm, and indeed benefited many of those beings inside hell realm. And then this monastic asked Dun, and saying that, well, do you know me? He said, not really. And then he said that I am the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva inside of the Kaishan Monastery. There was once a master named Jizang, and his disciple and him built this Ksitigarbha statue to liberate the sentient beings suffering in the lower realms. And therefore, I later on used different forms to benefit beings in the hell realm. And then he gave teachings to them and said that the beings are very different in hell realm. Some of them have deep meritorious roots, and then they will swiftly attain liberation. And there are some don't really have lots of virtuous roots, then it takes a longer time. And there are beings who have very heavy negative karma, and they're very difficult to liberate. Even if with all the blessings of Buddhas, it will be difficult to liberate them. So he, after passed out and then revived, then told everyone about his experience in hell realm, and they then later expounded the merits of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. So he asked the monastics whether he could take the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva statue back to his home, but the monastery said no, you can't, because it is considered as an antique. But they agreed that he could make another one that is the same replica. Over here we can see that whenever we have opportunities, we should try to build the image or statues of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. If there is a statue of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva in different cities and monasteries and so on, it would be very beneficial to the beings over there. So if we have the ability and if we have the opportunity, we can build statues or make images of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Let it be of the Chinese tradition, or let it be the Tibetan tradition of Ksitigarbha's image. They're all the same. For example, in terms of Shakyamuni Buddha's image, there are the types of image in the style of Thailand and in Tibet, in Chinese, but they're all the same. They're the image of Shakyamuni Buddha, maybe the image, or maybe sometimes the poses are different. In terms of Padmasambhava's statues, a majority of times he would be sitting, sometimes he's standing. Some of the images of Padmasambhava's image is standing according to the seven branches of supplication. In the 8 manifestations of Padmasambhava, we can see that some of the forms are monastic, some of them are lay practitioners, and so Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva could also have different forms as well, just as Avalokiteshvara has all different kinds of forms, because in order to tame different beings, they would appear or would manifest different forms, different images, so that the beings would generate faith. Therefore, whatever dresses or styles, there is no obstacle to express the devotion towards them. There's no obstacle to block them from their blessings. So whatever style you would prefer, you can make offering to them. Any kinds of style, in Thailand, Tibetan, or Chinese, they're all fine. So we should have faith to the images. Of course, young people nowadays, they don't really understand, and some people would say that this is idol worshiping, or this is a way to worship a creator, or a way to worship an image, all different kinds of slandering rumors. Of course, I can understand, because this is from people who don't really understand religion, who don't really understand Buddhism. Just like when there are people in this world who don't understand Confucius' teachings, and then they don't like Confucius, the person or the teacher. In the West, there's all different kinds of forms as well, the Statue of Liberty and all of those. In terms of the culture, there's a deep meaning. And not everyone would understand that deep meaning. So even on the worldly sense, there are people who are ignorant and that don't even mention in terms of religion and faith. In terms of building the image and building the statue, the culture and faith are deeply ingrained in those. There's a deep value inside of those images. And for people who never studied it and took the time to investigate, of course, it's natural for them to not understand it. There are people who studied it, but they studied it on a very shallow, on the superficial level, and then they would express a certain kind of bias.
对我们的这个
And
教育
they would
就是
sometimes
教育
even
呢，就是比
slander
较
or
应该是就是有
or
这个
destroy those
就
images.
是
This is very
包容性的
ignorant.
一个教育，
Our
或者说是
education has
我们
to
的这
be
个教育呢，
very
就是深入到这个
inclusive.
人性，就是从小都是很多都
That
深入
kind of
人性的话
education
呢，
that
那
is
么这
very
个呢，应该是对对
this
很
kind
多
of
人的这个一生来讲，
education
既有
has
这
to
个
be
这种智慧，
very
也有呢就是这
heartfelt.
种传统的这个道德观念
That has
这
to
样的
be a
人。但是我
combination
们
of
全世界来讲的
wisdom
话呢，
as
就是
well
实际上
as
是不管是这
ethic.
个亚洲人还是西方人的话呢，实际上是
Asians
应该说是这
or
个大文的
Westerners,
这种这个学说呢，就
Easterners
是
and Westerners,
对人们的
I
这种
think, are
除了物质以外，
under
就是其他
the
精神
great
上面的很多
influence
这个
of
这种价值观的话
Darwinians.
呢，就是完全都已经被抹杀了。就是这样以后的话
People
呢，现在
only
我们
consider about
就许多人
materialistic
其实西方
existence
人也是这样
and
的，
do
就是
not
西方人呢，
consider
西
the
方人还
value
有
of
还有一个什么呢？
spiritual
就是最根本的
importance.
呢，就是这个宗教，就是原来就是因为这个西方
In the
原来的这个
West,
宗教这个势力呢，就是非常强大的，
because
包括是中
their
东那一带的。
religious
那么这些
power
宗
was
教
very
宗教徒的
strong,
话呢，就是
was
不
very
管是那些神
overpowering
父
in
也
their
好，就是
history,
他们的话呢，当时利用这个宗教，
especially
然后呢
around
就是统治
the
这个
Middle
国家和
East.
统治这个人们。那么这个时候把
So,
宗教里面的有个别的这
the
种刺来
religious
这个开始
leaders,
控吓或者
they
是
would use
就
religion
控
as
制
a
这个社
method
会，
to
就这样之后的话呢
manage the country
就
and to
就人们
manipulate
呢
the
就是就
people.
更开始一致
So
认
there
为
are
认为是
kinds
这
of
样的。
words
但到了
and
荷兰，就
language
是荷兰呢，就是
to
有一些无
scare
神论也好，就是
people
有很多的
to
这个
use
政府当中的话呢，
religion
就
as
是
a
宗教就是
fear-mongering
没有
tool
这
to
个进入
control
到
this
他的这个
society. In
什么
such a
官方
way,
的这个教
some
育体系
people
的话
would
呢，那就是
have
他
a
们
bias
认为呢，
towards
就是凡
religion.
是带有这个宗教的话呢，
And
就是
then
都
people
可能
would carry
有
this
一
kind
些
of
危险
bias.
性，就是有恐惧性，就是有这样的
Later
这
on,
种
maybe because of
这个观念
the
就是其实这并不是
atheist
很合理的。
trend of
宗
the
教有宗教
society,
它的这个
then
合理性，
religion
但
did
是
not
宗教
really
呢
get
也
into
有
the
它的这个
educational
非理性，
system
它没有
of
把这个宗教
the
的真正
countries.
的教义呢，就是来这个
And
饶
then
益
they
这
would
个民众
feel，
而把这个宗教呢，就是就有
that
个别人宗教把这个拉到手里以后的话
religion
呢，为了达
or
到自己的目
with
的
the
就是
tint of
他来
religion
就是然后
in fact it
就控制
brings
人们的
a
这种
sense of
自由
fear
啊，
or
控制人们的这种
fear-mongering
行为，然后
values.
就是
They
有
have
各种
such
方
kind
式
of
来就是
bias,
戒毒，
but
就是
that
这
kind
样
of
之后的话
bias
呢，
is
最后就是
not
人们发现呢，就是有些地
is
方
not
是其实
appropriate.
是
It
不
is
合
not
情的，有
based
些
on
地方是
reason.
不合理的啊，就是有些地
The
方的话呢，甚
religions
至对他们的
indeed
国家的这
have
个法律
its
呢，就是衡量
values,
的时候也不合法，
and
有
religions
这样的
are
原因。
not
所以我
all
们现在那个我就是说呢，就是对
unreasonable.
这个圣像啊，就是这些的话呢，你就不明白
There
的时候
are
呢，就是你要
religions
想到是它背后
who
应该有这
use
个深深的
the
意义，
teachings to
这个是
benefit
不仅仅
people,
是我
and
们
there
的
are
佛想
religions
啊，
who
就是我
use
们
religion
对这个
as
世界的
a
这个
tool
文
to
化、这个艺术
manipulate
品也
people
好，
to in
还有
order
这个
to
宗教的
attain
这个
their
造像
goals.
的话呢，
So
我们也应
we
该
should
值得这
definitely
个
look
尊
at
重和值得
religions
尊敬啊。如果
and
你没有信
differentiate
仰，
them and
你对它
and
没有什么这个
analyze
信仰
them.
的话呢，但你应
And
该
then
就是要
later
想到，
people
这可
found
能不
out
是那么
that
简
there
单的，因
are
为它已经有这个
places
几
or
百
there
年、几
are
千年的
aspects
这个历
that's
史，
unreasonable and there are
有这么这个漫长
aspects
的
that's
这个历史的
reasonable
这
and
种过
so
程的
on.
话
We
呢，
should
应该是这
definitely
里面有一些神圣的
we
这
should
个意义在
definitely
啊，
use
就应该神
our
圣的内涵，
wisdom
你
to
应该可以这
differentiate.
样来理解。
Nowadays, I think there are
那
people
我
who
们这
don't
个下面
understand
呢，
about the meaning
就
of
讲什么？就是
statues,
今
but
天
you
是
should
讲
really
到那个
pay
昨天
reverence
的
because there is
就是
not
这个
just
业
it is
报，
not
就是
just
地
an
藏菩萨。
image, it has histories of hundreds and even
四
thousands
大
of
天王
years.
呢，就是问那个地藏菩萨，就是说是这个地
So
藏菩萨
now
呢，
let's get into the actual teaching
对
today.
就是
Yesterday we talked about the karma.
四大天王是问谁啊？四大天王是问。
Yesterday the four Dhamma Rajas asked Shakyamuni Buddha.
问世尊是吧？对，佛告四大天王，对，四大天王问那个释迦牟尼佛。
So the four Dhamma Rajas asked Shakyamuni Buddha, saying that, well, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has made so many aspirations to liberate sentient beings for innumerable kalpas, and he is continuously making aspirations. And why is that? In fact, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva has innumerable ways of skillful means to liberate sentient beings. Yesterday, we've already talked about 7 of them.
7个吧，就是我们就讲了那个7个不同的这个因果报应
different teachings on karmic retributions.
也就是说这个若遇因
Today
是无度
we're
者
continuing with the eighth one.
如果遇到了这个
Right?
因
The
是
eighth
无
one.
度的这个
To
人
those
就是
who
这
are
个肆无忌惮的，就
gluttonous
是没有任何戒制的，就是
who
去
would
吃啊喝啊
consume recklessly,
现在有一个叫
to eat
吃
and
播
drink
是吧？
recklessly.
就前
Nowadays,
面就是对
there's
一大
a
堆什么这
TV
个
show
虾
or
龙虾
eating
就是就
show,
哇
online
看起来
eating
都
show,
特别可怕，就
it's
然后
called
直播就是
mukbang,
全部都要吃
right?
下去。有些这个
The
非常非
host
常瘦的一个
of
人的
such
色
eating
就是吃的
show
特
would
别
be
特别多的，
eating
而且这个也
a
是
whole
特别
pile
多
of food,
有时候
such as
看起来
shrimp
也是
and
非常
lobster
可
and
怜
all
的
of
那
that.
些人撒肾
It's
啊，
quite
这个哇就
horrifying
这个很好
because
吃的。
the host would eat all of them.
应
Maybe
该可以
they
说是
look
这个
very
就
skinny,
是
but
这种
they
因
would
事
eat a
无度吧，
lot,
就是
and they're
就
very
这
popular.
种人呢，
But
就
it
是
is
报应
quite
什
a
么呢？
pity.
就是说这个
These kind of people
将来的话呢，就是给他们
commit so much
就是要说这
killing
个他饥
by
渴啊，就是那么
doing such
还有呢，
online
就是这个
broadcasting,
咽喉
and
病
they
啊，
would
就是
say
别
this
说
is
吃
so
到哎，就
delicious.
是现在
This
很多人
is
都是到
considered
后面
as
就是连
an
一滴水都没办法，
gluttonous,
吞下去，
eating
一滴
recklessly,
水都
and
没办
the
法饮下去。还有
karmic
那个
retribution
有
of
一些
such
是这个
is
1个月
thirst
的3年
and
这个一口
hunger
饭都没办法吃下去
and
的啊，就
throat
这种人
cancer
的话呢，
or
真的还是很可怜
esophagus
的。但可能
cancer.
前世也好，今世当中的
Maybe
话
at the
呢，
end
就
of
是
their
说
life,
造
they
诣
cannot
就是非
even
常非
drink
常
one
严重，
drop of
一点
water
节约
or
性
one
啊，一
spoon
点
of
不浪费的
one
这种
spoon
心
of
态都
food.
没有，就
This
是一
is
直是给
quite
别人，就是
pitiful.
不但是自己可能饮
These
食
kind
不
of
足，
people
还
have
劝别
no
人呢，就是
mind
这样
of
这个杀
cherishing
生当，
food.
就是浪
They
费这个
have
食物啊，
no such
就这
kind
种
of
人呢，就
feeling
最后
of
就是得到就是
saving
饥饿
food.
啊，就是这个干渴啊，
They would eat
还有这个
recklessly
就各种
and
这个
even
食道癌啊、hormone病啊，
encourage
就是这
others
些
to
来这
kill
个
and to waste food.
就是
And
逆开
that's
人
why
间
they
的，就
would
是这个报
have
应
such
就是
kind
讲
of
这个。如果遇
karmic
到一些
retribution or
这个
receive this
田
kind
野
of
啊，就是
fruition
自
of
行者
thirst and
就是
hunger
大孽
and
的意思，就是
different
这个大
kinds
孽的，
of
就是
throat
也可以
cancers.
说是这个肆无忌惮的，没有一点
And
的
then
这
the
种
ninth one says, for those
这
who
个
indulge
防
in
护性的，
hunting,
就是这
he will
个
teach
拼
them
命
the
的
karmic
就是杀那
retribution
个
of
一些
dying
野
in
兽啊、
fear
猛兽
or
啊，
in a
就是
crazed
这些人的
state.
话呢，那么给他们
There are
讲什
people
么
who
呢？就是
kill
讲这个
mercilessly.
就是金矿上命报
And
啊，
for
就是
these
就
kind
给
of
他们讲
people who
那个
hunt
就是
and
最
kill
后他可能就
mercilessly,
是要死的时候呢，
Ksitigarbha
就是
Bodhisattva
就
would
可能
teach them
就看到就是各种那个动物来就是开始
dying
杀
in
他
fear or
啊，
in
就
a
特别
crazed
恐
state.
慌啊，就是
At the
惊
time
慌啊，
of
就是这
death
种
of
特
such
别多
kind
人
of
当中
people,
就是
they
会
would see
会逆开人
different
间的啊，
animals
就是特
chasing
别
after them and
可
trying
怜
to
的
kill them. So they would be in a
那
state
个
of
金
great fear
老法师就是
and
他说
leave
是
this
他
world in
16
such
岁
kind of
他
mindset.
没有学佛
Indeed,
之
that's
前吧，
quite
就是
pitiful.
16岁的时候
Master
呢，就是
Jinkong
他
said
跟那个
that
他的父亲就一
before
起打
he
了3
reached
年的
the age
大
of
猎，就是到
16
了
and
山里
before
面
he
去。
studied
其实金
Buddhism,
老师以前
he
就是他说是拜
would
访白种，
go
就是他
hunting with
打
his
枪很厉害
father.
的，就是
He
然
went
后
hunting
他
with
就
his
也
father
杀
for
了
3
很多，
years
吃了
in the
很多
great
鱼，就是
mountains.
就这样的，
And
就是他
he
跟
said
父
that
亲一
he's
直这个
really good
杀
at aiming
杀
and
生很严重的，就是
killing
后来
the animals.
那个就是
He killed lots
46
of
岁的时候，
fish,
他的父亲
and
46岁
his
的时候呢，
father
就是得
also
了一
had
个非常
lots
可怕的
of
这
the
种
negative
发
karma
疯
of
的那
killing
种
as
金
well.
矿病，就是特别
At
特
the
别
age
可
of
怕的。然后
46, his
他看到
father
那个他
got
的这种死亡的话呢，就是也特别
his
特别的这
father
种这个
got
善性。后来看到这部
this
金刚经的话呢，就自
illness
己觉得
of
是自己业力就是非常深重，就是需要忏悔。
of
而且从这
demented
个他的父亲的这
mentality
个
and sometimes
这
would
种
go
这
wild
个
and go mad
这
and
个整个生
it
病和
was
死亡
very
的这个过
scary.
程对他来
After
讲是启发
witnessing
很大的，
that,
就是可能他后
he
来
was
是不是学
completely
佛出家，就是
heartbroken,
可能
and
有
then
有
he
这个
got
一
to
定的
know
影
the
响吧。所以
Ksitigarbha
有
Sutra.
些
He felt that
高僧
his
大德的话
negative
呢，就是在
karma,
没有出家之
his
前，
debt
就是也有
of
可能
negative
先
karma
像
is
是
quite
种
heavy.
种
Therefore,
的
he
这种
wanted
这个
to
行为，
make
就是当然
confession
这个也许是
through
显现，也许是
the
真
through
的是这样的一
witnessing
个过
his
程。我们
father's
看到很多大
illness
德的这
and
个
death.
传记的话
It
呢，就是
created
也
lots
是
of impact
刚
on
开始也是
him,
这样的。
and
通过他
partially
就
that's why he got ordained as well. Some great masters did lots of things before they got ordained, and I think we can see them as a manifestation. Some of the great masters' biographies are like such as well. through some of his descriptions, his father was exactly like what Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva stated over here. We see that people are so demented and completely mad, but they have no self-control at all. And these kind of people suffers from the karmic consequences of previous life or previous negative karma of killing. Nowadays, in the asylum, the patients over there, in fact, it's very pitiful to see them because there are various cruel ways of keeping them quiet, keeping them try to keep them under control because there's no way for the patients to keep their own mentality under control. I'm not sure if any of you here are hunters. If you were, then it is best to confess. I know a neighbor when I was still herding yaks at a young age. His name's Gongcho Sampo, and he would teach me how to make lassos and make traps to trap animals. And he would teach me. I would pretend to study, and then after that, I would come back to his traps and destroy his traps. He really wanted to take me as his disciple, but he didn't succeed in that.
这是一个报应，就是然后呢，就是如果遇到一些那个
of the karmic retributions, and then the next one, the 10th one, says that if he encounters those who do not respect their parents, he will teach them the karmic retribution of death by calamity.
对不孝顺父母的，就是这种人的话呢，那
The
么给
ones
他
who
们
do
就是
not
讲什么样的这个
listen
报
to
应
their
呢？
parents,
就是
who
这
do
个
not
天
pay
地在上就是出
filial
现一些什
piety
么被那个
to
累，
their parents, then the karmic retribution is death by calamity or accidents, such as stricken by lightning or tsunami or earthquake, car accidents, all kinds of natural disasters. So this is a kind of karmic retribution. There are people nowadays who would say, why all of a sudden so-and-so died like such? I remember that a little while ago from the nearby area, there were 6 students whose car fell into the river, and their corpses were not found. In fact, before 1 hour prior to their accident, the students called their parents saying that don't sleep yet, we're almost there. I think the driver fell asleep or got too tired and fatigued from driving or something. He drove the car directly into the river. And out of all the people, there was one girl around 2 a.m. She grabbed something inside the river, some branch or leaves, and slowly got to the bank of the river. So she survived, but she was injured quite badly. We can see that people's karma is very different. Under such circumstances, there are people who died and there are people who survived. People who don't believe in karma, they would consider that, why me? Why did I get this kind of illness? Why did I encounter such kind of unfortunate event? Why everyone's so happy and safe and sound, but why do I have to go through this? In fact, this is all because of your own karma. This kind of karma that is implanted on your own alaya. And that karma is different of everyone. So when the causes and conditions meet and matures, then the fruition would mature, because that seed would not cease in even kalpas. Therefore, in our daily life, let it be good or bad things, in fact, those are caused by the causes and conditions that cannot be seen. And in Buddhism, we call that the infallibility of karma. When people hear about karma is infallible, is unerring, and they would say, well, that's not true. But especially for people who never studied it, once they hear that karma, they would think that this is a sign of foolishness. But if you were to study and research and contemplate upon this, then maybe you can say that, and then you come up with your own answer. Maybe we can discuss upon it. But for lots of people, in fact, they have never even studied it. They have never even tried to contemplate or have any study in depth, and then they just reject upon hearing such terms, and that is not an appropriate way of learning any knowledge. So throughout the studying of the infallibility of cause and condition, in fact, if you were to study it, you would definitely recognize or accept it. And another fact is that even if you encounter something that is unfortunate, once you contemplate that this is the cause and conditions from the previous life, then it will be helpful. For example, if you've always been healthy, but all of a sudden you got some really strange illness, and whatever hospital you go to, there's no cure for it. In such a time, you should contemplate in this way that this is because of your special karma that you've created in previous life, and that's why you receive such kind of fruition. And that's why sometimes the doctors cannot do anything about it. Even if the medicine Buddha appears, it's very difficult to change the course of the ripened fruition. So we should definitely develop certainty in the infallibility of karma. This is quite important because everyone's life's not going to continue in the way that it is now. If it's never going to change, then nobody would die. People would die, would reborn, and would age, and some would succeed, would fail. In fact, lots of things happen, and that's because of the causes and conditions. Those cannot be seen by cannot be perceived by our dualistic mind. And in this, we should definitely have deep contemplation, and after that, we'll be able to develop certainty, just as it is stated in the Torch of Certainty. We would develop that kind of wisdom. The 11th one says that for those who set fire to forests, he will explain them the karmic retribution of dying after becoming lost in a state of fright. So different kinds of mental state of fear or of craze, and would sometimes even commit suicide. There are people nowadays who have different kind of mental disorders, and that could be part of that could be the fruition of destroying forests in the previous lives, because there are so many animals and birds that would reside in forests. And the 12th says that for those step-parents who are malicious to their stepchildren, he will teach them that they would suffer the karmic retribution of a similar abuse in the future. So whatever karma they create for others, they would receive such for themselves. Then the step-parents, for example, sometimes they adopted children, or there are stepchildren, if the step-parents would hurt them, would beat them up, then the fruition is to be reborn in such families in next lifetime, and also receive the same kind of fruition. Just as nowadays, I know there are children who grow up in violent families or suffer from domestic violence, and that could be part of the karmic fruition. And 13th one says, if he encounters those who trap flatulence, he will explain to them the karmic retribution of separation from their own families. And be separated from their bones and flesh. In our society, we can see that there are people who are suffering quite a bit, and it's very pitiful. There are people who got a certain kind of illness, such as skin illness, or there are people who need to have transplants of marrows and so on, or becomes handicapped. And in older days, there were different kinds of really cruel punishment. When I went to Cambodia and Japan, I saw that there are various kinds of punishment and tools of punishment. Some of them are to cut open people's skin and slice off their muscle as a way of punishment. Some of those people had this punishment could be the fruition of killing flatulence. It could be part of that karmic fruition. This kind of death does not lead you to death right away, but you would have to suffer through the whole process. In Israel, I saw in the record of in the Nazi Germany how the Nazis would cruelly kill the Jews. They would kill them and peel off their skin, and all kinds of suffering. That could be part of that fruition. And then 14th one, for those who slander the three jewels, he will teach them the karmic retribution of becoming blind, deaf, and mute. Let's contemplate upon ourselves. Have you ever slandered the three jewels? If you had, then it is the best to confess before your death. There are people who have lots of wisdoms, just as it is stated in the 10 Chakra Sutra of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. It says that there are people who had committed negative karma, but they can confess, and that could destroy the banner of the Mara, and this is quite necessary. In this lifetime, we have already encountered the correct Dharma. Otherwise, we would have no way of gaining liberation. Therefore, knowing what we've done wrong, we should confess. Otherwise, we would have no idea in how long we would suffer being mute or blind or deaf in the following lifetimes. And this is quite pitiful. There are people who are deaf or blind. I really feel they are quite pitiful because they would never even imagine they had created such kind of karma. And then if this seed continue to store in our mind stream, then it's going to continue to last in the cyclic existence. Therefore, we really need to try our best to destroy destroy the seeds. There are ways of doing it. Then the 15th one says that for those who are disrespectful to the Dharma and the teaching, he will teach them the karmic retribution of falling into the three suffering realms. Very pitiful again. And then the 16th says, if he meets those who damage temple properties, especially the properties belongs to sanghas, if one were to waste them, one were to damage them, then he will, then Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva will explain to them the karmic retribution of suffering in hell for millions of kalpas. I often tell the fellow practitioners that it is the best to be very careful of managing the properties that belongs to the sangha in a monastery. I think by simply saying it or talking about it is not enough. I've emphasized so much about this. In Larungar, when I manage any kinds of projects, I am very careful. There are people, there are great practitioners who would say that I don't touch money, I don't get involved with the money, I can do whatever other things. Well, even if you don't touch money, there are other ways of mismanaging it. In your bank card, in your cell phone, there are other ways. So I would often say that you don't touch money, that's fine, but the most important is to set up management rules. That is the most important. In each department, each group, each team, it is the best to have an appropriate and a thorough regulation. The property that belongs to the Sangha, if it were your part to enjoy, of course you can take that, but you shouldn't touch those which do not belong to you. Therefore, I really encourage the management of the monastery to have at least 3 people, a supervisor, a cashier, and an accountant. And whenever you need to take out any of the wealth or any of the property, you need at least 3 people to approve of it. So, also, the kind of people who manage wealth or manage the property should be changed every 3 to 5 years, because there are people who would be very careful with all the karma and all the little details, but after a while they get too used to it and get very jaded. Therefore, it is quite necessary to change the people on their post after 4 or 5 years. During the management process, and if you were to say that I promise to the 3 jewels I would not steal, well, the thieves say the same. They sometimes vow the same as well. There are people who do not believe in karma genuinely, then they feel that there is no problem of speaking lies, telling lies. So normally, managing the property of the 3 jewels and the guru, we have to have proper ways of managing it. We have to have proper system and proper documents that you can show it to the Sangha. Otherwise, when you just tell others that I didn't, I never, well, it is not valid. It is not valid in the jurisdictional system, and it is not the best in the monastery system either. Therefore, it is best to keep the document, and of course the document is not enough. You have to have the signature of the related managers and related people to sign for it. So we should have the same kind of management. If in the State Department they would do that, then we should have the similar kind of management. Do not say that, well, money is on my card, I will do good, I will make offering to the Sangha, I will release life, I would never take it on for myself. If you do that, people would feel very doubtful if you only say it without providing any evidence. So it is quite important, unless it is some card number that is provided by the officials, you should not believe it or wire transfer money to it. Otherwise, it's quite severe, the karmic consequence. So let's not do that. I've talked about it many times. I myself have never begged for money. I've never begged for any kind of, I've never done any kind of fundraising. And I don't need anybody to advertise for me that I need money, or to say that so-and-so Tuku really need money, so-and-so Kempo needs money. If they really do need money, let them do it. Let them ask for fundraising themselves. You don't need to advertise for it. This kind of actions is quite, it's indeed quite horrifying, because for people who use the properties of the Sangha, they would stay in the lower realms for billions of kalpas. You should calculate how many kalpas are billions of kalpas, and in that way, you know how severe it is. And then the 17th one, it says that for those who frame and slander the Sangha, he will teach them the karmic retribution of being reborn forever in animal realm. And 18th one, for those who harm lives by actions such as boiling, burning, cutting, or chopping, he will explain to them the karmic retribution of suffering the same fate in the future. So whatever you do to the others, that kind of karma will be reflected to yourself in the cyclic existence. If you were to boil the other beans, or burn the other beans, then you will receive the same kind of suffering in your later life. Nowadays, I see that there are people who really like to eat hot-boiled live shrimp and fish, and even fish and snake. So whatever way you kill them, you will experience the same way of being killed. According to Master or Zen Master Jigong, he once were at this wedding, and he saw that the reincarnation of the cow and goat were sitting on the center stage, and then the relatives are boiled in the pot. So then he said, he told that to everyone in a verse. Then later, also Venerable Gadayana, he after used his clairvoyance to observe this kind of different phenomena in the 6 realms. He noticed that whichever way we killed the other beings, that person will be killed the same way. In Ksitigarbha Sutra, it says that if one were to eat lamb, then the lamb would be reborn as a person, and that person would die as a lamb. That's how all beings would die and live, die and born, and then eat each other again and again for lifetimes. Lots of Buddhists, in fact, do believe in karma, but maybe because you have never really truly experienced this kind of karmic retribution, and because you've never really received education since a young age, this kind of education since a young age, therefore you kind of believe in it. But we need to develop certainty that this is the karmic retribution that will be received in later life. We have to contemplate upon that thoroughly. The idea of karma is, or in fact, karma is very profound. And the profound teachings such as this can be understood through the teaching of emptiness. In Madhyamikavatara, it says that if one were, it says that to the profound teaching of karma, we don't need to contemplate upon it, because the mundane beings' thinking or contemplation cannot lead to conclusions of karma. You have to trust in it because it is taught by the Buddha. In fact, the previous great masters, they would ask people to practice upon the four common practices, and that is the life is different, human life is different to attain, and life is impermanent, karma is infallible, and the fault of samsara. So that's very important. Nowadays, there are some modern Buddhists in the United States. They do not recognize that there is previous life and afterlife. They only talk about some very superficial ways of karma. I've heard that some of the Buddhists who then don't believe in the previous life and after do not acknowledge the six realms, they only talk about emptiness and impermanence, the ones that they consider is very good. I heard there are people like that. In fact, last year I really wanted to meet him. I really wanted to get to know why he would think in such a way. He said that he would practice, and he studied from some Nepali meditator who teaches him to meditation. And after knowing Buddhism, he only wanted to trust part of it. And then it says that to those who destroy things or spend money needlessly, he will teach them the karmic retribution of their wishes not being fulfilled. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. To those who destroy things or spend, for those who break their monastic vows or precepts, he will teach them the karmic retribution of suffering, starvation after being reborn into animal realm. Nowadays, there are the animals or are the ones who broke their vows, their monastic vow, Bodhisattva vow, or the monastic vows, so they would be reborn as animals. Especially there are beings in Africa who starves all the time, like the pretas or hungry ghosts. To these kind of beings, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would teach them the karmic retribution of breaking vows. The next one, 20th, to those who destroy things or spend money needlessly, he will teach them the karmic retribution of their wishes not being fulfilled. There are people nowadays who would needlessly continuously destroy or break the public properties. And for these kind of people, they would not get their wish fulfilled. And then the 21st, for those who are arrogant, he would explain to them the karmic retribution of being relegated to low status and being disrespected. There are people who are born in good families, who are born in noble families and have a good appearance and lots of wisdom. All of their properties are more supreme than the others. And there are people who would be born in low families, in lower status, or poor families, and the appearance and wisdom are not good compared to the others as well. And that is the karmic retribution of being arrogant in previous life. So, for people who in this lifetime are in low status, if they were to practice diligently and respect the noble ones, they will also be reborn as the noble ones in later life. And the 22nd says that if he encountered those who verbally instigate conflicts or endlessly gossip, he will teach them the karmic retribution of being reborn without tongues or being unable to speak intelligibly. There are people nowadays who were born without tongues, or the tongue got rotten since a young age. So that's a karmic retribution of gossip and creating schism among people, conflict among people. So we definitely need to pay attention to our speech, otherwise we would create unnecessary negative karma in our lifetime. That is why practitioners often say that do not speak needlessly. It is the best to chant the mantra at all times. But often I hear people often talk about others, speak ill of others, and in such a way they would create lots of negative karma for themselves. We should rather praise the three jewels and praise the merit of the Sangha. I just heard someone gossiping, and that person was not happy about anything. And I think sometimes it's because of their ripened karma. So we need to pay attention to our speech, otherwise we would create horrible negative karma. On top of that, because of internet nowadays, there are people who would post lots of foul language or negative words to also create a conflict online. Nowadays it seems that everyone could be journalists online, and they could then create lots of schism and bring lots of negative karma towards others and self. They could post on Twitter and TikTok. Of course, if you can use those platforms to benefit beings, that would be great. But there are people who would post things just based on their mood, and that would shift a lot. There are people who would post such kind of things, and their relatives or friends, after reading all of those, people would feel that this person changes so much. This person must have lots of mental illness. There are leaders nowadays, and you can see that certain leaders would send about 200 Twitters a day, and that must be some kind of mental issue. So people would definitely think that people who changes a lot, shifts a lot, and tweets so much to be the ones who have some mental issues. So in terms of language, we have to be very careful. There there are people who would spread the teachings, then that would be beneficial to thousands and even millions of people. And there are people who would post the things from their hearts, and then there are others who would feel that, oh, this person's probably in good mood, but on the other day, that person did not have a good mood. I sometimes would read into the Weibo, the Chinese version of Twitter of certain Tibetan temples. Sometimes I would look into their Weibo, very few of them. And whenever I look at their Weibo, I see that their life is rather quite calm, and their pictures are also very peaceful and calm through some very short sentences of their description. We can see that this person lives in a very peaceful and calm mentality, maybe because they have lots of faith towards the Buddha or towards Padmasambhava. We can see that a person's mentality could influence lots of people. The people on your social media, in fact, would be affected by your social media posts on various levels. Tibetans usually say that one should observe the circumstances if one wants to speak of even one sentence. So we definitely need to be more aware of the circumstances. This is quite important. When we're speaking and writing and so on, there are unavoidable mistakes that we would make, and some misleading language would be created without intention. That happens, but there are times that our mind could control us not to speak ill of others or to create schism between others. We should also try to explain to the others if some of those schisms were created. Then also to those with deviant views, he tells the karmic retribution of being reborn in hinterlands. It seems that Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva is giving teaching to other sentient beings, to all the other sentient beings, but in fact, we should pay attention to each one of them ourselves. There are 23 different kinds of karmic retribution that are rather easy to violate in our daily life. After teaching, after studying this, we cannot guarantee that we will avoid all of them every day. If we can practice all of them, that would be wonderful. Then we're bodhisattvas. If we can avoid all of them, we will be bodhisattvas. But at least we should try to avoid the ones that would cause severe karmic consequences, such as killing the others, or killing the beings, or break vows, or use or harm the property of the Sangha. Because after knowing the karmic retributions, we will definitely be very careful. There are people around us who are very careful with their speech. We would know that, well, this person definitely received the education, the Buddhism education. But if there are people who would slander and use foul language, we would know this person had never received the education of Buddhism in terms of the karma, or that person may have lots of afflictions, and that's quite horrifying. The consequences for that person could be very horrifying. So after receiving the education from the Buddha, I think we should change our actions. And this kind of change would be the best to be kept for our whole life. Do not only pay attention for the first 2 or 3 days after listening to a class, and then put a pin or hang on your neck with a sign that refrains from speech and stop from speaking. And then after a few days, start to slander others and even beat others. And then it's not really useful. True practitioners do not change back and forth. I think it is quite important to have the personality that is steady. If a person is steady, then it would be very reliable. If a person is steady, if a person is steady, that is really the best kind of personality. That's the first criteria to find anyone on any position. If a person is steady, then the view of that person would be steady, same as the body and speech, so they won't change back and forth. But nowadays, people think a lot. They would think that I'll stay here today and there tomorrow, and after 2 days, they would go here and there. They're blown away by the wind of karma, and there's no way to control themselves. If we were to understand who we are, to know what we want and who we are, then especially we can discover who we are through our friends. And just as according to the aphorism of the Sakya, it says that without wealth is fine, without other things are fine, but it is necessary to have a best friend. Let's look around. There are people who don't have friends at all. They are so lonely, and the reason is really because of themselves. They themselves are the ones to blame. Nowadays, lots of countries would do statistics. They found that through their research, we can see that nowadays people have less and less friends. On an average, there are about 1.5 friends per person. That's loyal and trustworthy. So there is a lesser and lesser number of friends per person nowadays. That is because people nowadays are getting more egoistic. They no longer have the mind of benefiting others, and their mind is not steady. Why people are getting more egocentric? It is because the education from the West has then completely wiped out the other cultures in this world. Other countries used to have their own culture, the different traditional value they would carry in their culture, such as filial piety towards parents, caring and love for the friends, as well as loyalty and so on, all different kinds of traditions in different countries. But about 300 years ago, the egocentric teachings in the West started to spread. So friends, companions or spouse or even parents, all of them would take themselves with great importance, but lost the mind of altruism, lost the mind of benefiting others. Because whenever people have an altruistic aspiration, others would feel that person completely mad. They would feel that, well, why would you mind others' business? You should mind your own business instead of digging your nose in others' business. And under this kind of culture, people really start started to transform into something completely different than human beings. So let's look at education nowadays, not just one or two countries, but the whole globe. The globe-wise education has become this egocentric education, and under this educational system, people have less and less trustworthy friends, and some people don't even have any. When we talk about practice, in fact, the basis of practice or basis of becoming a practitioner is to be a good person. We would say that the most important is to see that if the person's very pays great importance or place great importance on the karma, then this person is trustworthy. Because this kind of person would have the mind of benefiting others, and this person must be very honest. So there are people, of course, they're very good people to start with from their nature, and there are people who can learn it from their education, because this kind of quality can be nurtured. The altruism or trustworthy faithfulness and sincerity and so on. So with or without a good education, for nowadays, however, education, let it be good or bad education or excellent education, we can see that all the way from kindergarten to PhD, people mostly study about how to earn money, and people would consider earning money and the different skills of earning money is the most important, even through lying to others or harming others. If you know Adam Smith and his theory on economy, I don't think the monastics really care about it, but I think you really should study it, because we can see through all of this kind of books, the education of the West really completely turned the whole world around. They would talk about benefiting others and bodhicitta, but how can we spread this teaching, and how can we turn the educational system around, and how far we can get this through? So we definitely need to propagate the educational system about the infallibility of karma, and if everybody could believe virtuous deeds would ripe to virtuous fruition and vice versa, then we would have a better educational system. So over here then continued, these are the karmic retributions to the malicious actions produced by sentient beings, body, speech, and mind in Jambhavipa. I only have briefly mentioned some of the hundreds of thousands of karmic retributions. So previously, I've already said that we should use different ways, various types, methods to teach sentient beings. So over here it says the sentient beings in Jambhavipa suffer from various types of levels of karmic retribution, and Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva uses hundreds of thousands of expedient methods to instruct and transform them for those sinners who do not change their ways to repent. They will first receive this aforementioned karmic retributions to their malicious deeds and then fall into hell. I think we need definitely to learn this kind of skillfulness from Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. Previously, there's Pemberton Temple. He would teach the perspectives from teach kids the perspectives from Venerable Tsongkhapa and Gorenpa, and all the kids were playing in the class. Sometimes when I pass by their classroom, I know he likes debate, but he do not really pay attention to his audience. Maybe he's very smart and maybe not very good in his EQ, but IQ is very high. Because the kids had no idea who Tsongkhapa was or Gorenpa was, and he didn't really care. So we definitely definitely need to be very skillful as Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. For people who have lots of anger, we need to teach something to such kind of people that's related to anger, or if such person have lots of grasping towards wealth, then we need to teach accordingly. We should not teach the ones who haven't take refuge yet about hell realm, and then they would get scared away. They would never want to take refuge again. So we definitely need to be very skillful about what to teach to different types of people. A few years ago, I went to various countries, and sometimes I don't really know that country, and I don't really get enough information from the internet. And then from the airport, I would ask the local people different questions. I would ask many questions that would be very helpful for me to give teachings to the local people, because on the second day I would have to give teachings, give lectures. Therefore, it would be the best for me to get to know what they like the most and what they don't like, what they really dislike, and all of those are quite important, because to know the faculties of the sentient beings of certain areas is quite necessary, and the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva would teach the sentient beings like such. So for those sinners who do not change their ways and repent, they will first receive these aforementioned karmic retributions to their malicious deeds and then fall into hell. Even after many kalpas, their date of release is still indeterminable in the distant future. Hence, you Devarajas of the four directions who protect humans and their countries, do not let these karmic obstructions delude these sentient beings. So make sure that you do not let the sentient beings in your countries to get so deluded and practice so many negative deeds, because that would lead to immeasurable suffering in hell realm. The four Dharma Rajas, the four Deva Rajas, are entrusted by Shakyamuni Buddha. That is why in front of all the monasteries you can see the four Deva Rajas at the door, because they made the vow to protect the beings in Jambudvipa, according to the extensive biography of the world honored one, as well as the medicine Buddha Sutra. Then the Buddha said over here, you need to protect these beings because they're so pitiful. So as Dharma protectors, you need to try to prevent these beings to create negative deeds. I don't really teach a lot every day on the Ksitigarbha Sutra, but I genuinely hope that each one of you who hear the teaching of Ksitigarbha Sutra to later propagate the Dharma in skillful ways. If we ourselves have such opportunities, we should then give up our selfishness and give up our grasping and use all kinds of skillful ways to benefit sentient beings with the Dharma. And to do so, we have to make lots of aspiration. Look at how many aspirations Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva made. He made the innumerable grains of sand in the Ganges River numbers of aspirations. And how many have you made? Maybe once or twice during certain Dharma assembly, and I completely forgot about it after. Of course, I made that up, and maybe it's not true, but anyhow, you have to continuously make aspirations. Then after hearing this, the Devarajas of the four directions were saddened and withdrew with their palms joined. The Devarajas then teared up, maybe because they were saddened, maybe because they were very touched, and then they withdrew with their palms joined. There are people nowadays who once meeting the great master or great Toku, and when they had to leave them, they would depart with sadness and also with lots of heart-touching feelings. So the four Devarajas also felt the same way after hearing such profound Dharma given by Shakyamuni Buddha. They felt very grateful and withdrew with their palms jointed. So let's end over here. We'll continue later.
Sonam dei tamche zubanya tomna ni be jana pashe jirga nanji ranong chubai chubam zole jowa jowa jo